At 78, I've learned a simple trick. When someone tries to drag you where you don't belong, you don't pull back. You step aside and let them carry their own weight to the floor. It isn't cruelty, it's physics, and a little bit of dignity. I boiled the kettle at 7, set out 2 cups though I only ever drink 1, and looked at the oak armchair by the window, the only place my hips forgive me. The cushion remembers me better than my family does. Outside, the postman waved. Old habit, I waved back. My name is Margaret Halpern. Today I will not be moved. Morning makes everything look cleaner than it is. The curtains still hold the faint smell of lemon soap. My hands do the old routines without asking me. Open the tin, measure the leaves, warm the pot. When the kettle clicked, I poured and waited for the tea to darken into something honest. The house was quiet enough to hear the radiator ticking. I like that sound. It says nobody is rushing me. The letterbox snapped at 8:20. A white envelope slid onto the mat with my daughter's tight handwriting. Claire never visits before noon. She manages schedules the way other people stack plates, fast and without looking. I slit the envelope with a butter knife. Mum, Adam will drop by to help you clear some space. Don't fuss. We'll be there at 4. No, please. No, would that suit you? Just will. I set the note by the sugar bowl and counted to 10, a habit from my years at the post office when men shouted about parcels as if I'd kept them personally. 4 o'clock was hours away. I could have said no. The phone sat on the counter like a dog that knows its name but won't come. I made a list instead. Keep the winter coats, donate the extra glassware, ignore any talk of heirlooms finding a new home. The chair wasn't going anywhere. The chair is my husband's weight still living in the wood. I whispered, "You're not up for grabs, are you?" The chair kept its counsel. At 11, I watered the spider plant and put a biscuit on a plate I didn't plan to share. It isn't stingy to be careful, it's survival. People think a widow will agree if you speak quickly enough. I move slowly on purpose. It makes the truth show its face. By 2, the sky had gone the color of washed denim. I took the old wool throw from the arm of the chair and folded it tight, because neatness is a kind of armor. The phone finally rang. Adam's voice, cheerful in that way people sound when they've already decided something for you. "Gran, we're just doing a quick sweep. Mum says you've got doubles of everything." "I've got doubles of patience," I said. "And 1 chair." He laughed like I was teasing him. "We'll be gentle." "You'll be guests," I answered. "That's gentler." Silence. A small one, but I heard it. "See you soon," he said, bright again, and hung up. I made another pot of tea, because some confrontations go down better with a warm cup in your hand. I put 2 slices of lemon on a saucer. I put the spare key back under the blue planter where I keep it for the neighbor who waters my plants when I'm ill. I imagined Adam's tall shape filling the doorway, Claire's eyes doing that quick inventory they've done since she was 12. What's tidy? What's useful? What can be moved? I felt the familiar soft ache between my shoulder blades and pressed my palm there until my breath steadied. At 3:50, the gate latch clicked. Voices. A man's laugh I didn't know. Then Claire's brisk knock, 2 short, 1 long, as if the rhythm could command my feet. I took my time crossing the rug. The door opened to my daughter's hard smile, to Adam's grin, and to a third face, a friend of my grandson's, broad-shouldered, carrying a box that smelled faintly of someone else's garage. "Gran," Adam said, stepping past Claire before I could invite him, "we'll start with the living room." Mom said the big chair should go first so we can see what space we've got. The big chair, I repeated, as if I were learning a new word. It has a name. Mine. His friend chuckled and pretended to study the ceiling. Claire pressed her mouth thin. Mom, don't make this dramatic. We're helping. Then help by asking, I said. I walked to the chair and set my hand on the worn arm. Tea's in the kitchen. Anyone who wants to be civil can start there. Adam didn't move toward the tea. He moved toward me, easy as a man reaching for a light switch. Come on, Gran, up you get. You've got the sofa. I sat. The cushions sighed. My bones did not. I looked at his hand, the hand I had held across roads, across parking lots, across the small distances that can still break a child's knee. It hovered an inch from my sleeve, young and sure, as if every chair would flatten beneath it. Adam, I said, and I kept my voice steady, the way I spoke to men who came to the counter with their tempers blazing. You will not touch me. You will take your shoes off or leave. And you will remember who paid for your first set of textbooks and the second when you lost the first. You will remember, and then you will choose your tone. He flushed. The friend shifted his weight. Claire stared at the mantel at the photo of my husband as if looking at him might save her some embarrassment. We don't have time for speeches, Adam muttered. We're just shifting a chair. We are not, I answered. I lifted my teacup to my mouth and found it empty. I set it down. We are finding out whether you understand the difference between help and taking. He reached. That easy. That casual. His fingers closed around my forearm, where the skin is thin and honest. I felt the pressure and the impatience in it, the years of small favors turned into expectations. I have never been strong, but I have handled stubborn doors and sacks of winter mail and the narrow pride of men who don't like to queue. Strength is not the same as steadiness. I loosened my own hold on the armrest. I moved my elbow a breath. I let his momentum belong to him, and then I stepped aside. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from pain, though my knees had their say, but from the words rattling around in my head. His words. The way he had reached for my arm without looking me in the eye. The way I'd stepped aside and let him stumble. More from instinct than plan. The sound of his body hitting the carpeted floor was softer than I expected, but the shock in his eyes was sharp enough to slice me open. At dawn, the house was so still I could hear the clock in the kitchen ticking like a metronome. I shuffled to the kettle, put it on, and sat down without turning on the light. The sky outside the window was pale and tired, like me. When the tea was ready, I carried the cup to my chair. The same one he'd tried to pull me out of. My chair, bought by my late husband when I turned 60, a seat that had molded to my shape over the years. I sat, hands curled around the cup, and stared at the photograph on the mantel. Charles, standing on the deck of that little fishing boat, grinning with the kind of pride only a man who'd just fixed an engine with nothing but a wrench and swearing could have. He'd warned me more than once that giving too much to our boy would turn into a habit. For him, not for me. You can't teach gratitude with a checkbook, May, he'd said. I'd laughed back then, certain that love and help were the same thing. By 9, the phone had rung twice. Once it was him, my son, not even 24 hours since he'd raised his voice at me in my own kitchen. And once it was his wife. I let both calls go. Instead, I opened the little desk drawer where I keep my bank papers. Neat folders, years of deposits and withdrawals, All the proof of how much of my life I'd poured into theirs. Mortgage payments with my signature. School fees. Medical bills. A set of golf clubs for his birthday when he was finally closing that big deal. A deal that never seemed to materialize. As I traced the lines of ink on those receipts, I felt something in my chest change. Not harden, exactly. More like shift into place. A spine I'd misplaced. By 11, I was at the bank. I'd dressed for it too. Not for him, not for them, but for me. Blue skirt, cream blouse, the good brooch Charles had given me on our 40th. The teller recognized me. They always do in small towns. I'd like to cancel every automatic transfer to my son's accounts, I told her, steady and polite. Her eyebrows went up, but she nodded. All of them, Mrs. Keaton? All, I said. And I'll need to revoke his access to my accounts, power of attorney included. It took paperwork. It took a long wait in one of those upholstered chairs that smell faintly of disinfectant and pen ink. But when I walked out, the air felt different. Lighter. I didn't go straight home. I bought myself lunch at the cafe near the post office. Soup and bread, eaten slowly, with no one to hurry me. And when I did go home, there was a figure on my porch. Grandma! It was Lila, my granddaughter. She jumped up from the step, nearly tripping over her own feet, and rushed to take the grocery bag from my hand. Inside, over tea, she got to the point. Dad's saying you've gone, well, I don't know. Drastic, I guess. He's upset. What happened? I told her the truth, or most of it. She listened without interrupting, her eyes growing darker by the minute. I'm sorry, she said finally. I know they've been using you. I just didn't think it would go this far. It's gone far enough, I said. I'm done. She nodded, but I could see the worry on her face. The same crease I'd seen on my own in the mirror that morning. She left soon after, promising to call. When the house was quiet again, I sat in my chair, the one they'd tried to take from me, and realized something I hadn't allowed myself to before. I wasn't angry because they needed me. I was angry because they didn't see me. And now, finally, they would have to. It was 2 days before he came back. Long enough for him to feel the loss, short enough for him to still believe he could reverse it with the right mix of guilt and bluster. I saw his car through the lace curtain before he even stepped out. Silver sedan, freshly washed, the kind that costs more to service than most people's monthly rent. He didn't knock right away. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, scanning the street as if deciding whether to play this loud or quiet. When the knock came, it was sharp. 3 raps, close together. Not the rhythm of someone asking to come in, but of someone announcing they already belong. I opened the door just enough to look at him. Adam. Gran. He tried a smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Can we talk? I stepped aside, but only far enough for him to enter the hall, not the living room. The chair was behind me, where it belonged. He didn't sit. So, the bank called me. He said it like a man delivering news of a flood, expecting shock, maybe panic. And? They said my transfers aren't going through. Said you revoked access. What's going on? I held his gaze. I decided my money should stay with me. He laughed, short and brittle. Your money? Gran, I'm your grandson, family. Yes, I said, which is why I've given more than I can count. That's done now. His mouth worked, but no words came out for a second. Then, you know I've got bills. I'm already behind on— You're behind, I said, because you've been walking in front of me, expecting I'll carry the load. I can't. I won't. He looked at the floor, then back at me, softer now. Is this about the chair? No, Adam. The chair was just the first time you reached for me and found I wasn't holding you up. That landed. I could see it in the flicker of his eyes, the way he shifted his weight. Gran, you don't understand. I'm trying to get my life straight. I've got plans. Plans are fine, I said. Pay for them yourself. Something in him snapped then. The voice came up, the jaw tightened. You can't just cut me off. After everything I've done for you. I felt my lips twitch, not quite into a smile. Everything you've done for me? He flinched. We both knew the list would be short. We stood there a moment longer, the air between us thick with things neither of us would say. Finally, he stepped back toward the door. You'll regret this, he said, low. No, Adam, I answered, just as low. I regret not doing it sooner. The screen door banged behind him. His car started, the engine loud in the quiet street, and then he was gone. I didn't move right away. My hands were steady, my knees less so, but I stayed standing in the hall until the sound of his engine faded. Then I went to the chair and sat, feeling the worn armrest under my palm. It wasn't joy I felt, or victory. It was space. Room to breathe without someone else's weight pressing down. The phone rang that evening, my daughter's number this time. Mother, she began, clipped and formal. Adam tells me you've decided to make things difficult. I've decided, I said, to keep what's mine. A pause. Then, with a tone I'd heard in her voice since she was a teenager, we were only trying to help you manage. You're not as young as you think. I'm not as naive as you think, I replied. She inhaled sharply. Well, if you're going to be stubborn, I suppose we can't stop you. No, I said. You can't. When I hung up, the house was silent again. I sipped my tea, the steam curling in the lamplight, and for the first time in years, I realized I was waiting for no one. That night, I slept. Really slept. By Sunday afternoon, I had counted 3 separate calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I let them ring. People who really need you will leave a message. People who want something usually hang up and try again later. When the 4th call came, I answered without thinking. Mrs. Keaton? The voice was bright, rehearsed, the kind they use when they're about to ask you to change your mind. This is Emily. I'm Adam's friend. She lingered on the last word as if testing how it might sound. He's a little upset. He feels like there's been some kind of misunderstanding. There hasn't, I said. She laughed lightly. I'm sure you don't mean to hurt him. He told me how close you two were. He's just in a tight spot, and... I cut her off. If Adam has something to say to me, he knows where I live. He doesn't need a messenger. There was a pause. Then, I just thought maybe you didn't understand his situation. I understand it better than you do, I said, and hung up. I made myself a sandwich, took it out to the porch, and watched the street. Somewhere down the block, children were playing, the squeals and thud of a ball bouncing on pavement. I thought of Adam at that age, knees skinned from climbing the oak in the yard, running into my kitchen with the kind of hunger that made a sandwich vanish before I'd even sat down. The screen door creaked behind me. You could have told me, a voice said. It was Lila again. She came around to the front, backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair loose and windblown. She sat on the porch rail like she used to when she was small, toes kicking the air. Told you what? I asked. That you'd cut Dad off, that you'd changed the accounts. He's not taking it well. I imagine not. She bit her lip. He's been calling everyone. Aunt Marcy, Uncle Dean, even Mom's cousin in Ohio. Says you're not yourself lately. That maybe someone should step in. The words settled heavy between us. It was a tactic I knew well. Make someone seem unstable, and you can justify taking their control away. Lila, I said, there's nothing wrong with my mind. Your father just doesn't like my decisions. She met my eyes and nodded slowly. I told them that. But you know how they are. I did. I'd seen enough of these family storms to know how they gather. First, the whispers. Then, the concerned visits. Finally, the paperwork that shifts your name off your own front door. When she left, I went inside and opened the old tin box on the top shelf of my wardrobe. Inside were the deeds to the house, my will, and the envelope Charles had sealed years ago with a note that read, "For May, when she needs it." I didn't open it. Not yet. Monday morning, I called Mr. Perry, my solicitor. He'd been handling small matters for me since before Charles passed. I'd like to review my will, I told him. When I arrived at his office, he poured tea and listened without interrupting. I explained the pressure, the lies, the arm on my sleeve. His eyes hardened, but his voice stayed gentle. We can put the house into a living trust, he said. Appoint a trustee you actually trust. Make it so no one can touch it without your consent. And if they try? I asked. They'll fail, he said simply. By the time I left, my affairs were cleaner than they'd been in years. My bank accounts were solely in my name, my home protected, my will rewritten to benefit the local library and a scholarship fund, not the people who saw me as a resource to tap. Back at home, I brewed tea and sat in the chair. The late sun was laying gold across the carpet. My hands rested on the armrests, palms flat, as if holding the seat steady. They could talk. They could whisper. They could send friends and cousins and anyone else they liked to knock at my door. But I was not moving. They came together on a Thursday afternoon, the way salesmen travel in pairs, so one can talk while the other watches your face. I heard the car before I saw them. The slam of two doors, quick footsteps up the path. My daughter first. Coat unbuttoned, her hair pulled back tight enough to make her look even sterner. Adam followed a pace behind, hands in his pockets, his mouth set in a straight line. Mother, Claire said, stepping over the threshold without waiting to be asked. We need to talk. I see, I answered, not moving from the doorway. About what? She shot a look at Adam. He took the cue. About this situation, he said. You're making things harder than they need to be. Harder for who? For all of us, Claire said sharply. Cutting us off without warning, changing your will. Yes, I know about that. It's hurtful and unnecessary. I closed the door behind them and stood still. Unnecessary for whom? The people who thought my money would last forever? Or the people who thought I wouldn't notice how I'm spoken to in my own house? Adam sighed. That long-suffering sound I used to hear when he was a boy, asked to do his homework before going out to play. Gran, no one's trying to hurt you. But you're overreacting. One bad afternoon doesn't erase all the years. Doesn't it? I cut in. Do you know how many years I've been told I'm overreacting every time I said no? Claire stepped forward. This isn't about the chair. You're right, I said. It's about respect, which has been missing longer than you're willing to admit. Her eyes narrowed. We're your family. Family doesn't grab your arm to move you like furniture, I said quietly. Family doesn't send strangers to talk sense into you family doesn't start calling lawyers behind your back." She hesitated just a moment, just long enough for me to see she'd been caught out. "We were concerned," she said finally. "Concerned enough to take my choices away," I replied. "That's not concern, Claire. That's control." Adam shifted his weight. "Gran, come on. You're making this into a battle." "We just want things back the way they were." I met his eyes. "Back the way they were means me paying while you take. That's over." Claire's voice rose. "You'd really rather cut your own daughter and grandson out of your life than help us when we need it?" I didn't raise mine. "I'd rather keep my dignity than trade it for the chance to be tolerated in your lives." The room went still. Adam's eyes flickered to the chair. Claire's lips pressed tight. I could feel the distance between us, a gap that had been there for years but now stood bare in the middle of my living room. "I think we should go," Adam muttered. Claire looked at me for a long second, as if trying to memorize this version of me, the one who wouldn't budge. Then she turned on her heel. At the door, Adam paused. "You know," he said, "one day you're going to need us." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll never need you like you think I do." The door shut. Their car rolled away. I sat down in the chair, feeling its familiar shape hold me. Outside, the late light fell across the path they'd just walked, gilding the edges of the world I had decided to keep for myself. For the first time in years, I felt like the ground under my feet truly belonged to me. It was a week before I saw him again. That was enough time for my garden to start showing its spring colors. Tulips just tipping open, daffodils standing tall as if they owned the place. I'd been pruning the roses when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I stood up slowly, brush clippers still in my hand. The silver sedan was back, but this time it wasn't alone. A black pickup pulled in behind it, the kind with mud still caked on the wheel arches. Adam climbed out first, sunglasses on though the day was overcast. 2 men followed from the truck, both young, both built like they'd been paid to move other people's belongings for a living. One carried a flattened cardboard box. The other had gloves tucked into his back pocket. "Gran," Adam called, his smile broad and false. "We thought we'd help you get started with that clearing out you've been talking about." "I haven't been talking about it," I said. He ignored me, walking up the path as if he owned it. The 2 friends trailed behind, glancing at each other like they were in on a joke I hadn't heard. Inside, the air was cool from the morning's rain. I'd left the front door unlocked, my mistake, and Adam pushed it open without asking. "Let's start in the living room," he said. "Get the big stuff done first." I stayed in the doorway. "There's nothing in here that needs moving." "That's not what Mum said," he replied. "She's worried about you tripping over things. We're doing you a favor." His friends began looking around, their eyes settling on the oak chair in its spot by the window. I stepped past them, slowly, and put my hand on the armrest. "No one touches this." Adam's smile thinned. "Gran, it's just a chair." "It's my chair," I said. "And you're guests in my home. Start acting like it." One of the friends, the taller one, muttered, "Man, let's just take it and go." Adam didn't tell him to be quiet. He took a step closer instead. "You're making this harder than it has to be. We're trying to help." "You're trying to take," I answered. The shorter friend snorted. "Same thing, ain't it?" I looked at Adam. "Get them out of my house." He shook his head, and the smile vanished. "We're doing this today, whether you like it or not." My fingers tightened on the chair. I could feel the smooth dip in the wood where Charles's hand had rested for years. I thought of all the evenings we'd sat here together, him with a book, me with my knitting, the world outside our window. "You're not moving this chair," I said. Adam came forward, closing the space between us until I could smell the faint tang of cologne he'd probably borrowed from a friend. "Gran, you can sit on the sofa for once. Come on." "I'll sit where I choose," I told him. His hand twitched toward my arm, then pulled back, as if he remembered the last time. But the look in his eyes told me he hadn't learned the lesson. He just wanted to pick a better moment to force it. The taller friend started unfolding the box. "We're wasting time," he muttered. Adam took another step, standing right over me now. "Move, Gran." I looked up at him, steady. "No." For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Then Adam gave a short, sharp laugh, as if to play the tension off, and gestured toward the box. "We'll just pack it around her," he said. They all started toward me then, and I knew. The moment was coming. The one I'd seen in my head since the day I'd stepped aside and let him fall. The taller one bent to slide the flattened box behind the chair. The other hovered near the armrest, eyes darting between me and Adam, like he was waiting for permission to touch something he knew he shouldn't. "Don't," I said to both of them, not raising my voice, not blinking. Adam crouched slightly, palms open like you might, with a skittish dog. "Gran, let's make this easy. You stand up, we move the chair, you sit back down. 10 minutes. Tops." "10 minutes for you," I said. "The rest of my life for me?" He sighed, that deep, irritated sound. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "Am I?" My fingers rested lightly on the armrest, but every muscle in my body had gone still. "This is my home. This chair is mine. You want it, you ask, you don't grab." His eyes hardened, and I could see the decision forming in his mind, the same one I'd seen in boys behind the post office counter just before they'd try to shove past me to where they weren't allowed. "Fine," he said. And his hand came down. It landed on my forearm. Not a gentle guiding touch, but a grip. Firm, warm, fingers curling just enough to say, "I'm in control here." The two friends shifted their weight, ready to lift the chair the moment I was on my feet. I could feel the tendons in Adam's hand flex. I could feel the faint tremor of his impatience. I could smell the faint, sharp scent of his cologne, see the shadow of stubble along his jaw, and I thought, in that heartbeat, "You've done this before. Not this exact thing, but this kind of thing, assuming the body in front of you will move when you push." I let go of the armrest, just my fingertips lifting, almost nothing at all. His grip tightened automatically, pulling upward. I didn't resist. I didn't help. I simply stepped sideways. The motion was small, but it was enough. His own pull sent him off balance. The arm that had been steadying him, mine, was gone. His weight went forward. His knees hit the edge of the cushion. His upper body pitched past it. The taller friend reached out too late. Adam's shoulder struck the back of the chair, and then he stumbled sideways into the coffee table. The box clattered to the floor, the sound loud in the quiet room. "Whoa, man," the shorter one said, half laughing, half surprised. Adam straightened, rubbing his arm, his face flushed with more than just the stumble. "What the hell, Gran?" "You pulled," I said, my voice calm. "And you fell. That's all." He stared at me, eyes narrow. I could see the humiliation working its way through him. Not because I'd hurt him, but because I hadn't played the part he expected. I hadn't resisted. I hadn't given him the satisfaction of a struggle he could pretend to win. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, glancing at his friends as if looking for backup. "Then leave," I said. The taller one shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should, Adam. This ain't worth it." But Adam wasn't ready to give up. "You think this is over? You think you can just—" "Yes," I said, cutting across him. "I can just. Because this is my house, and you're standing in it without my permission." For a second, no one moved. The taller friend took a slow step toward the door. The shorter followed. Adam stayed where he was, breathing hard, his eyes fixed on me. Then finally, he turned and walked out. Not quickly, not stomping. Just a steady retreat that felt like him swallowing something bitter. I didn't follow. I stayed in the chair, hands folded in my lap, listening to the sound of the door closing, the muted rumble of engines starting, and the gravel crunching under tires as they pulled away. The house was mine again. The silence after they left was different from the kind I usually kept. It wasn't the calm that comes from an empty house and a pot of tea cooling on the table. It was the kind that follows a slammed door, air still vibrating, dust still settling. I stayed in the chair a long time, my hands resting on the armrests, fingers tracing the smooth, worn grooves in the wood. I could feel Charles there, not as a ghost, but as memory pressed into the grain, steady, patient, refusing to be shifted without reason. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once, then again. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower started up. The ordinary world kept going, but in my living room, the air still carried the faint scent of Adam's cologne and the sharper, heavier tang of his frustration. I should have been shaking. Maybe 10 years ago I would have been. But my breath was even, my heart steady. I'd spent a lifetime smoothing over other people's tempers. This time, I'd stepped aside and let the temper fall where it belonged. The coffee table still sat a little askew from where Adam had bumped it. I reached down, straightened it, and smoothed the runner on top with the flat of my palm. There. Right again. In the kitchen, I filled the kettle. The familiar sound of the burner clicking on grounded me. I chose the good china cup, the one with the faint blue pattern around the rim. If you're going to drink victory tea, it might as well be in style. As the water heated, I thought about the last year, the small moments I'd ignored, the casual way Adam would pick up something from my shelf without asking, the way Claire would rearrange my cupboards when she visited, saying she was making it easier for me. Little trespasses, smoothed over with smiles. Each one a quiet rehearsal for today. The kettle clicked off. I poured the water over the leaves, watching them bloom and darken the liquid. In that simple swirl, I could see the truth. I had been training them to treat me this way. Every unspoken protest, every polite smile at a rudeness had been a kind of permission. Not anymore. I carried my cup back to the chair, sat down, and let the steam curl up into my face. The late afternoon light came through the lace curtains, scattering patterns on the carpet. The chair cradled me as it always had, the seat giving just enough under my weight, holding me steady. I knew Adam would be on the phone already. To Claire, to anyone who'd listen. The story would shift, tilt in his favor. In his version, I'd been stubborn, unreasonable, maybe even unstable. That was how these things went. But I also knew this. Every person he called was another person who'd hear my name, and maybe they'd remember the woman they'd met at the post office, the one who handled parcels and tempers with the same unflappable care. Maybe they'd wonder why she would suddenly draw such a hard line. And maybe they'd think, just maybe, that she'd had good reason. The phone rang twice that evening. I didn't answer. I let it sing its hollow song into the room, then stop. I was done justifying myself. As the light faded, I fetched the tin box from the wardrobe again. This time, I opened the envelope Charles had left for me. Inside was a short note in his firm, blocky hand. May. If you're reading this, it means you've decided you've had enough. Trust yourself. You're stronger than they think. Below it, a bank certificate for a small account I hadn't touched in years, enough to keep me secure, independent, untethered from their grasp. I smiled. A real one, the first in days. I slipped the note back into the envelope, put it in the tin, and returned the box to its place. The chair was waiting. I settled into it, tea still warm in my hand, and thought, this isn't just about keeping what's mine. It's about keeping me. It was mid-morning when I saw her car pull into the drive. Claire, alone this time. No Adam, no friends with cardboard boxes. Just my daughter in her dark coat and those heels she wears even when the pavement's slick. She didn't knock. She opened the door the way she used to when she was still a teenager living here. Half hesitant, half entitled. Mother? In here, I called from the living room. She stepped in, her eyes landing on the chair first, then on me. Good. You're up. I've been up since 6, I said. Some of us still keep the morning. She smiled, but it was tight, the kind that's meant to soften the next thing she says. I thought we could talk. Just us. I gestured toward the sofa. Go on. She sat, smoothing her coat over her knees. I know things have been tense, and I know Adam, well, he can be impulsive. That's one word for it. She pressed her lips together, ignoring the jab. But he's young, Mother. He's trying to find his footing, and you've always been there for him. I've been there for both of you, I said. Yes, she admitted, and maybe we've leaned on you more than we should have. But cutting us out entirely. I haven't cut you out, I said. I've drawn a line. She leaned forward, hands clasped. Do you know what people are saying? They think you're angry, that you're pushing family away, that maybe you're not thinking things through. I've thought about nothing else, I said. She looked down at her hands. We're your family, Mum. Adam's your only grandson. He's made mistakes, but he loves you. Love doesn't grab my arm to move me out of my own chair, I said evenly. Her head came up fast. He didn't mean, I don't care what he meant, I care what he did. She exhaled through her nose, like she used to when she was a child denied some treat. You've always been stubborn. I've always been steady, I corrected. We sat in silence for a moment. The old clock on the mantel ticked loud in the pause. Finally, she said, Adam's in trouble financially. If you could just help him get through this rough patch. Claire, I said, you've been telling me he's in a rough patch for 10 years. If the road's been rough that long, it's not the road. It's the driver. She blinked at that. I could see she didn't have a ready answer. I softened my tone, but not my resolve. You're my daughter. I want to see you. I want to have tea and talk about your work and the weather and the tulips in the garden. But if every visit is just another request for money or things, we won't see each other much. Her mouth tightened again. So that's it? You've decided, and nothing I say will change your mind. That's it, I said. She stood, smoothing her coat again. I don't understand you. You don't have to, I told her. You just have to respect me. For a moment she stood there, eyes searching mine for some hint of weakness. Then she turned and walked to the door. I'll tell Adam you said hello." "I didn't," I replied. The door closed softly behind her. I stayed in the chair, listening to her car pull away. My hands rested on the worn wood of the armrests, the same as they always had. But something in me felt new, not harder, but clearer. They could try again. They probably would. But every attempt would find me right here, in my place, steady as oak. They didn't wait long. 2 days later, the silver sedan was back in my drive. This time, Claire was with him. The sight of them climbing out together told me everything. Whatever softness she'd tried last time had been replaced with resolve. His kind, not mine. Claire led the way up the path, chin high. Adam followed, hands stuffed deep in his jacket pockets. Neither looked like they'd come for tea. I opened the door before they could knock. "You're back," I said. "We need to settle this," Claire said, stepping past me. "It's gotten out of hand." Adam brushed in behind her, eyes sweeping the room until they landed on the chair. He didn't bother to hide his focus. I closed the door. "What exactly needs settling?" "You keeping things you don't need," Adam said flatly. "Need has nothing to do with it," I said. "It's mine." Claire crossed her arms. "You're making this harder than it has to be. You could let him take it now, and we can all move on." "Move on to what?" I asked. "The next thing you want to take?" Adam stepped forward. "Gran, enough. Stand up." I stayed seated. "No? You're really going to do this again?" he asked, his voice low but charged. "Yes." He glanced at Claire, and whatever passed between them in that quick look was agreement. She didn't say anything, but she didn't move to stop him either. Adam's jaw tightened. He took 2 strides and stood over me. "Last chance." I met his eyes. "Adam, if you put your hands on me again, the fall will be yours alone." He reached. Not slow this time. His fingers clamped around my forearm with the confidence of someone sure of the outcome. I loosened my grip on the armrest. I shifted my weight, just slightly, and slid my arm free. His momentum, unchecked, carried him forward. Without my body to anchor against, he stumbled. One foot caught on the edge of the rug, the other slipped on the polished wood beneath. He pitched sideways into the coffee table, sending a stack of coasters scattering to the floor. The sound was sharp, and in the stillness after it, I could hear Claire's intake of breath. Adam straightened quickly, cheeks flushed. "You did that on purpose." "I didn't hold you," I said. "That's all." Claire looked at me then, really looked, as if something new had taken shape in her mind. I couldn't tell if it was anger, embarrassment, or the faint edge of understanding. Adam muttered something under his breath, but I didn't ask him to repeat it. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "Both of you." Neither moved at first. Then Claire turned to her son. "Come on." He hesitated, then followed her out. The door closed behind them with a dull thud. I sat back in the chair, my palms flat against the armrests. My heartbeat was steady, my breath even. Through the window, I watched them walk to the car. Claire glanced back once, her expression unreadable. Adam didn't. The sedan pulled away, and the sound of it faded down the street. The house was mine again, and this time, I knew the lesson had landed. Not because I'd forced it on them, but because I'd refused to be moved. The house felt different after they left. Not quieter, it had always been quiet, but clearer, as if some long fog had finally burned off. I made tea, not because I needed it, but because the sound of the kettle and the warm weight of the cup grounded me. From the chair, I could see the front gate. No movement. No shadow on the path. By the next morning, the phone started again. Aunt Marcy called first. Her voice dipped in concern like a spoon in syrup. "I just want to make sure you're all right, dear. I heard there was an incident." "I'm fine," I said. "Adam's a good boy, you know. He doesn't mean—" "I know what he means," I interrupted. "And I'm fine." She hesitated, then lowered her voice as if the walls had ears. "People are talking, May. They think maybe you should ease up, for the sake of peace." "Peace for who?" I asked. She didn't answer that. We exchanged polite goodbyes, and I hung up. An hour later, my neighbor Ruth stopped by with a pie she just happened to bake. Over coffee, she leaned forward. "Adam was over at the petrol station this morning, telling anyone who'd listen that you've gone stubborn. That you're letting pride get in the way of family." I smiled at that. "Better pride than debt?" She chuckled and squeezed my hand. "Good for you." When she left, I went to the wardrobe and brought down the tin box. Out came the deed, the bank documents, and the envelope from Charles. I laid them on the table like cards in a game I was finally ready to play. That afternoon, I called Mr. Perry again. "Let's move forward with securing the trust," I told him. He had the papers ready the next day. At his office, I signed my name where he pointed. The trust was formal now, the terms clear. The house and its contents were mine for as long as I lived, untouchable without my written consent. Upon my death, they would pass not to Adam or Claire, but to the local library's literacy program. "You're certain?" Mr. Perry asked. "I'm certain," I said. Back home, I placed my copy of the trust papers in the tin box, locking it with the small brass key that had hung on my keyring for years. Then I put the box back in its place, high and out of reach, where only I could get it. That evening, the phone rang again. This time, it was Claire. "I don't know what you've done," she said without preamble, "but Adam's furious and hurt. He feels betrayed." "I imagine he does," I said. "Mom—" Her voice caught, and for a moment I thought I heard something real under it. "This isn't you. You've always been generous." "I'm still generous," I told her. "Just not foolish." Silence. Then clipped. "Fine, have it your way." "I will," I said, and hung up. After that, the calls slowed. The visits stopped. My days returned to their quiet rhythm. Morning tea, the postman's wave, afternoons in the garden. The absence of them was not loneliness. It was space. One evening, as I sat in the chair with the light fading through the curtains, I thought about what Charles's note had said. "You're stronger than they think." I believed him now. The first week after the trust papers were signed felt almost too quiet. No phone calls demanding explanations. No unannounced footsteps on the path. Even the post was lighter. Fewer envelopes with other people's handwriting asking for just a little help. I didn't realize how much space those demands had taken up until they were gone. It was like moving a heavy wardrobe out of a room and suddenly seeing how much light the window could give. My mornings became mine again. I rose when I pleased, not when someone else's problem needed solving. I'd open the curtains in the living room, greet the garden as if it were an old friend, and settle into the chair with my tea while the world outside stretched itself awake. I began baking again, small things, scones and shortbread, not because anyone was coming to eat them, but because I enjoyed the smell. I gave a plate to Ruth next door and another to Mr. Perry's secretary, who had been kind enough to make me extra copies of the trust. Some afternoons I'd walk to the library, carrying a novel home under my arm. The librarian, a quiet woman named Elaine, would ask if I wanted to join the reading circle on Tuesdays. I hadn't said yes yet, but I liked that I could. But beneath it all, there was a thread of readiness, a taut string I kept in my mind, humming faintly. Because people like Adam, like Claire when she followed his lead, rarely accepted a closed door without testing the handle again. One afternoon, as I watered the plants by the window, I saw a car slow in front of my house. Not theirs. Just someone unfamiliar idling as if they were looking for an address. They drove on after a moment, but I felt my back straighten, my hands still on the watering can. I thought about what I'd do if they came back, if Adam showed up again, or if Claire tried another soft-spoken visit that was really just a bid for control. The plan was simple. I wouldn't open the door unless I chose to. I'd keep my chair, my calm, my place. Sometimes, late in the evening, I'd think about the old version of myself, the one who believed that keeping peace meant keeping quiet. She was gone now, or maybe she'd just stepped aside, the way I had when Adam's hand was on my arm. Let him fall under his own weight. Charles would have liked that thought. I imagined telling him about the trust, about the library's future windfall, about how Adam had stumbled twice now and might think twice before trying again. I imagined him smiling, not with triumph, but with that slow, approving nod he gave when I'd done something hard and right. The chair creaked slightly as I leaned back, my palms resting on the worn wood. Outside, the tulips were fully open, their petals catching the last of the light. Inside, the air was still, the kettle cooling in the kitchen. The piece wasn't an accident. It was built, like a garden wall, stone by stone, each one a choice to keep what belonged to me. And if anyone came to test it, they'd find it stood as steady as I did. It came on a Tuesday, a plain white envelope, my name written in Adam's quick, impatient hand. No return address, but I recognized the slight smudge where the ink had caught on the loop of the Y in May. For a moment, I thought about leaving it on the hall table, unopened. But curiosity, and a kind of duty to see what he had to say, won out. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, torn from a notebook. The words were cramped, crowded together, as if he'd written them in one sitting without much thought to space. Gran, I guess you've made up your mind. Fine, I won't ask again. But you should know things haven't been easy. Lost my job last month. Been staying with a mate. It's not great. I thought family was supposed to help each other out, but I guess you see it different. I won't bother you anymore. Just don't expect me to come around at Christmas or birthdays. You made your choice. There was no signature. Just his name printed in block letters at the bottom, like he couldn't bring himself to sign it the way he used to when he was a boy. I read it twice, then set it down on the table beside my chair. The old me might have felt the pull, the temptation to write back, to soften the edges, to offer just a little until he was on his feet. But the words didn't sting. They settled in me the way dust settles on a windowsill, noticeable, but not worth sweeping up right away. He was right about one thing. I'd made my choice, and perhaps he thought his letter would wound me or guilt me into a reply. But what I saw in those cramped lines was something else. Proof that he could survive without me. He already was. Maybe not well, maybe not comfortably, but survival doesn't require comfort. That night, I made tea and read in my chair until the light faded. The letter stayed on the table, untouched, a silent marker of the line we'd drawn between us. Over the next week, life went on. I took a basket of scones to Ruth. I joined Elaine's Tuesday reading circle and found myself laughing, actually laughing, at a story someone told about a runaway goose. I baked another batch the next day just because the smell made the house feel warm. On Friday, I took the letter from the table and put it in the tin box with the trust papers and Charles's note. Not because I needed to keep it safe, but because it belonged to this new chapter of my life. The chapter where I didn't bend every time someone leaned on me. The tulips in the garden had begun to drop their petals, leaving small yellow cups on the soil. I knelt to clear them away, feeling the earth cool under my hands. Renewal, I thought, is never as loud as people expect. Sometimes it's just clearing space for what's next. Inside, the chair was waiting. I sat, hands on the armrests, back straight, the way I always did now. Not because I was defending it from anyone, but because it had become my place of choice, not my place of retreat. Adam might never sit in it. He might never come back through that door. And that was all right. The garden would bloom again, the kettle would boil, the chair would hold me, steady as oak. I'd made my choice. It was a gray morning when I saw her car again. No Adam this time. Just Claire, pulling up slow as if she hadn't decided whether to park or keep driving. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment, hands resting on the wheel, then finally got out. I opened the door before she could knock. "Claire." "Hi, Mom." Her voice was soft, almost tentative. She stepped inside, her eyes flicking briefly to the chair, then away again. I gestured toward the kitchen. "Tea?" She nodded. "Please." We didn't speak while I filled the kettle and set 2 cups on the counter. The silence between us wasn't the brittle, sharp kind from before. It was something looser, with room in it. When the tea was ready, I carried the cups to the living room. She chose the sofa without prompting. I took my chair. She held her cup in both hands, looking down at the steam. "I got your letter," she said. I frowned slightly. "I didn't send you a letter." "From Adam," she clarified. "He sent me a copy of what he wrote to you. Said I should know why he's upset." "And do you?" I asked. She gave a small, humorless laugh. "I know why he's upset. But I also know why you did what you did." I waited. She looked up then, meeting my eyes. "When you told me you'd put the house in trust, I thought it was cruel, like you were cutting us out just to make a point. But after the other day—" She stopped, shook her head. "I saw the way he grabbed you, the way he acted like it was his right, and I realized I've done that too. Not physically, but in other ways." I didn't let my face soften yet. "Go on?" She took a breath. "You've always been there, Mom. Always ready to help even when we didn't deserve it. And we've treated it like a given. Like something we could take without asking." I sipped my tea, the warmth steady in my hands. "And what do you think about that now?" Her voice dropped. "I think you were right to stop it, even if it hurt." I didn't answer right away. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a bird called once, then again. Finally, I said, "Understanding is the first step. Respect is the next." She nodded slowly. "I'm trying." We finished our tea without much more talk. When she stood to leave, she hesitated by the door. "I don't know if Adam will ever come around," she said. "That's his choice," I replied. She gave me a long look, part regret, part something else I couldn't name, then stepped out into the cool air. I watched her drive away, the car shrinking down the street until it turned the corner and was gone. Back in the living room, I sat in the chair, the cushion giving under me in its familiar way. For the first time in years, I felt that maybe a bridge hadn't been burned completely. Maybe it had just been closed for repairs. The peace in the house was still mine. But now I wondered if one day I might open the door and let someone in without wondering what they wanted to take. Not today, not tomorrow, but maybe. Spring deepened. The tulips gave way to irises, the irises to roses. The air carried that warm green smell that makes you want to throw every window open. I spent my mornings in the garden, my afternoons in the chair, and my evenings in the soft company of books. Claire called twice in the weeks that followed. Short conversations about the weather, about Ruth's new puppy, about the fact that the library's literacy program had made the local paper. She didn't ask for anything I didn't offer. We were finding a new rhythm, one that left space for both of us to stand on our own feet. Adam didn't call. His silence no longer stung. It was simply a fact, like the rain on a Monday or the postman's early arrival. I hoped, in some small corner of myself, that he was finding his own footing somewhere. But I no longer felt it was my job to make sure he did. The trust papers stayed in their tin, alongside Charles's note and Adam's letter. Sometimes I'd take them out, run my fingers over the crisp edges, and remind myself that these weren't just documents. They were proof of something I'd built. A wall, not to keep the world out, but to keep myself in. One quiet evening, as the sun slipped low and the curtains turned gold, I thought about the first time Adam had tried to move me from this chair. How quickly it had happened. The hand on my arm, the tug, the expectation that I'd yield. I thought about the moment I stepped aside, and how natural it had felt. Not an act of aggression, but one of self-possession. That was the real turning point. Not the legal papers, not the arguments, not even Claire's visit. It was that single choice to let someone else's weight fall without catching it. I'd been catching people my whole life, their tempers, their debts, their disappointments. I'd been a net, and nets wear thin. Now I wasn't a net. I was a chair, solid, steady, mine. Ruth stopped by that night with a slice of lemon cake. "You've been quiet," she said. "Quiet can be good," I told her. She grinned. "Looks good on you." After she left, I sat in the chair with the cake on a small plate, the fork light in my hand. The house was still. Outside, the street lamps flickered on one by one. Somewhere down the block, a child laughed. That bright, bell-clear sound that makes you think of summers when the days seemed endless. I thought about what I'd say if someone asked me now what I'd learned from all this. I'd tell them this: you are allowed to keep what's yours. You are allowed to sit where you choose. And you are allowed to step aside when someone tries to pull you where you don't want to go. It isn't unkind. It isn't cruel. It's simply remembering that you belong to yourself first. The cake was sweet. The tea still warm. The chair cradled me as it always had. I watched the light fade until the room was all soft shadow, and I felt the kind of peace that doesn't ask for permission. If you're reading this and you've been holding too much for too long, if you've been catching every fall that isn't yours, let this be your reminder. You can let go. You can let them stand or stumble on their own. You can keep your seat. And when you do, you'll find it's not the world that steadies you. It's you.